another question here from Redefine Living. I think this is going to the old Earth debate, with like the creation story in Genesis, which says, did God create the Earth or the stars first? So maybe like talking about like how you interpret Genesis and like what's going on with the descriptions in the 6 days of creation.
I know that Hugh Ross is an astronomer. He also identifies as a Christian, but I know he likes that secular consensus when it comes to astronomy. I also know what the Bible says, so when I had an opportunity to ask him a question, I asked him a very thought-out question.
Yeah, the Bible doesn't explicitly address whether or not the stars were created before the earth.
Wait, what?
What it does tell us, however, is that the sun, earth, the moon, the stars predate the 6 days of creation.
Mr. Ross, let me show you. Genesis chapter 1, day 3, God made the earth. Day 4, he made the sun and the moon and the stars. Day 3, earth. Day 4, stars.
And so the Bible really doesn't tell us much about what happened before the beginning of creation, day 1. But for example, we see in Genesis 1:2 is it establishes the initial conditions for the creation days. It's dark on the surface of the waters. The waters cover the whole surface of the earth. And Job 38 makes the point that God had blanketed the early earth with clouds that kept the waters dark, which means there could well have been stars and galaxies and the sun beyond the earth, but their light would not reach the surface of the earth until on creation day 1, God transforms our atmosphere from opaque to translucent. And not until creation day 4 does the atmosphere become transparent.
Day 3, earth. Day 4, stars. Mr. Ross, let me show you one more. This is in Exodus. These are the 10 Commandments. God literally wrote these with his own hand. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the 7th day.
And back in 2018, a group of physicists actually did an experiment that established how indeed our atmosphere went from translucent to transparent. It all has to do with the great oxygenation events. The amount of oxygen in the atmosphere determines how clear the atmosphere will be. When you have less than 1% oxygen in the atmosphere, Earth's atmosphere is so hazy, light from the stars and the sun will reach the surface, but you won't be able to see the sun and stars in the sky. Not until the oxygen content goes above 8% does the atmosphere clear, where creatures on the surface of the Earth can actually see where in the sky the sun, moon, and stars are. And that's what you see in Genesis 1:14. Let there be the great lights, so that they serve as signs to mark seasons, days, and years, referring to the animals that God will create on creation day 5. So the Bible is silent on this issue.
Day 3, earth. Day 4, stars.
About which came first. The science is not silent. It's very clear that galaxies and stars predate the formation of the Earth.
Wait, what?
Although I will add this, we astronomers see stars forming to this very day.
Yeah, that's not really accurate, but I can tell you why Hugh brought that up about the star formation. It's because we see a star supernova about every 30 years. So when we see this billions and billions of stars, you can't explain how they got there according to the secular consensus by way of subtraction, right? You can't be losing stars. You have to explain how they're formed, but we've never seen it happen. So he assumes that they're forming in a nebula. But if he was really honest...
If you look in the Orion Nebula tonight with a pair of binoculars, that pair of binoculars will reveal a whole lot of relatively newborn stars.
I'm Spike Psaris, your host. For a number of years, I worked as an engineer in the U.S. military space program. I entered that program as an atheist and an evolutionist. I left it as a creationist and a Christian.
Oh, hey, Spike. Hey, can you do us a favor and tell us the problems with star formation? They might listen to you before they'll listen to someone like me. Thank you.
In this video, we'll be talking about stars, galaxies, nebulae, and many other things. Along with stars and galaxies, we see lots of other beautiful things in space. In this video, you'll see many photographs of nebulae, large clouds of gas and dust. Some of these are among the most beautiful objects in space. They play an important role in the discussion about where stars came from, as we'll see. So where did the universe come from? Most evolutionary astronomers believe that the universe formed by itself about 13.7 billion years ago in an event called the Big Bang. If the Big Bang model were true, should we see stars in the sky today? The answer to this will probably surprise you, especially because there are frequent announcements about discoveries of star-forming regions in space, like this nebula. We're told that we see lots of places where stars are forming today. Evolutionists like to point to regions like this as support for their model, but that's a logical fallacy, a red herring. Whether or not stars are forming in the universe today, or whether they could form in the universe today, is not the question. The question is this: if the universe formed itself, as the Big Bang model says, without a creator being involved, would we see stars today? And the answer is no. Here's why. In the Big Bang model, stars are supposed to have formed from clouds of gas, as gravity squeezed the gas together. But there's a problem here. A cloud of gas in space will not collapse into stars on its own. It's true that gravity pulls the gas molecules together, but gravity is a relatively weak force, and it's much weaker than gas pressure, which forces the gas molecules apart. Here's an illustration I like to use. This is a can of compressed air. When I pull the trigger, it opens a passage from outside the can to inside the can. So what happens when the gas can travel freely? It comes out, because gas always disperses from areas of higher pressure into areas of lower pressure. When I give talks about this, I like to ask the audience, how much gas would you need inside the can to create such a strong gravitational force that when I pull the trigger, gas wouldn't come out of the can? Instead, all the air in the room would get sucked into the can, and we would all asphyxiate and die. People laugh because this idea is ridiculous, but that's the kind of concentration of gas you would need to form stars from a gas cloud in space. You can't maintain a cloud of gas at a higher pressure than its surroundings unless you keep it in a container of some kind. This can is a container, so the gas stays inside without dispersing. But there aren't any containers in space, so there's nothing that prevents gas clouds in space from dissipating. Not only that, there are other things that will prevent a gas cloud from collapsing into stars. As one evolutionist wrote, "We know the cloud wants to collapse under its own weight to make one or more stars. But rotation, as well as turbulent motion within the cloud, work against that fate. So too does the ordinary gas pressure you learned about in high school chemistry class. Galactic magnetic fields also fight collapse. They penetrate the cloud and latch onto any free-roaming charged particles contained therein, restricting the ways in which the cloud will respond to its self-gravity." But you might be wondering something by now. If stars are made of gas, and if gas clouds in space will disperse, then how can stars exist? It's because they're much denser and much smaller than the gas clouds we're talking about. Gravity is stronger at higher densities and smaller distances. Therefore, if there's enough gas in a small enough volume, gravity is strong enough to overcome gas pressure. That's why stars are stable, even though they're made of gas. But interstellar gas clouds are too large and too diffuse for gravity to overcome gas pressure. So they won't collapse and form stars. They'll disperse instead. Evolutionists know this is true, but they need to have stars form out of gas clouds in order for their model to work. So how do they explain this? Actually, they have several explanations. First, they suggest that compression can overcome gas pressure and allow stars to form. The compression would come from a supernova. Supernovae are tremendous explosions in space. For a short time, they can produce as much energy as an entire galaxy. They're incredibly violent. For example, the Crab Nebula is the remnant of a supernova that occurred in the year 1054. This supernova was so bright that it was visible during the daytime for more than 3 weeks. Supernovae are thought to trigger star formation when one explodes close to a gas cloud. This creates a shock front, which compresses the cloud, overcoming the gas pressure. Gravity then takes over and compresses the cloud further, and stars begin to form. The second explanation is cooling. When a supernova occurs, it might also inject dust grains and particles into the cloud, or the grains can get there from other ways. The dust cools down the cloud, which reduces gas pressure and again allows stars to form. A third possibility is collisions, where the gas cloud gets compressed when something else collides with it. This can occur when galaxies collide with each other, as you see in this example here. A fourth possible explanation comes from black holes. Some evolutionists suggest that black holes emit jets of high-speed material, which crash into gas clouds and trigger star formation. A final possibility is that radiation from a cluster of newborn stars can trigger star formation within nearby gas clouds. So evolutionists have several explanations for star formation today. But notice something important about these explanations. They all require stars to exist before more stars can be made. Supernovae occur when old stars explode. According to the Big Bang model, interstellar dust grains also come from existing stars. The model can't account for them otherwise. Black holes are thought to form when massive stars run out of fuel or have certain other things happen to them. And before galaxies can collide, they first have to exist, and they're made up of stars too. The same is true for radiation from newborn stars. This is a huge problem for the secular model. The Big Bang can't make any stars until stars already exist. It's like the classic riddle of the chicken and the egg. You need chickens to make eggs, and you need eggs to make chickens. The Big Bang model has this problem on a much larger scale, a universal scale. It can't make stars until stars were already made. Add up all these problems, and you see why evolutionists say things like this. The origin of stars represents one of the most fundamental unsolved problems of contemporary astrophysics. There are so many uncertainties in this picture that at present we do not really have a theory of star formation. If stars did not exist, it would be easy to prove that this is what we expect. Most of us are persuaded that stars form out of more diffuse material, which must, therefore, condense, contract, accrete, etc. Nevertheless, nearly all observations of pre-main sequence and protostars are dominated by outflowing stuff. Literally hundreds of ideas on how stars were formed have been advanced in past decades. However, we are still far from any real solution. We're starting from a shaky foundation. We don't understand how a single star forms, yet we want to understand how 10 billion stars form. If none of us knew in advance that stars exist, frontline research would offer plenty of convincing reasons for why stars could never form. Remember this the next time you admire the night sky. All the stars you see, and billions more that you don't see, all defy the evolutionary model just by existing.
So star formation has been proceeding since the time the universe was about 500 million years old. But most of the stars indeed formed before the formation of the Earth.
That's not what the Bible says. So, Mr. Ross, you can disagree with God. That's fine. Maybe you know better than him. Maybe you can answer those questions that he asked Job. That's fine. But don't tell us the Bible doesn't say. That's what you can't do, okay? You're welcome. You're welcome.
Great. Another question here.
T-minus 16 seconds. Sound suppression water system has been activated, protecting Discovery and the launch pad from acoustical energy. We have a go for main engine start. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, hoisting harmony to the heavens and opening new gateways for international science.